So thanks everyone for joining this second webinar in our series. We're going to now look at the mobile digital twin and how to access your data on the go. So we're just going to take 15 minutes to talk through two mobile apps and a short demo of each of them. And then we'll have 15 minutes at the end for questions as well. So please do just tap questions into the Q&A panel as we go, if anything comes up that you can think of, and we'll do our best to answer them at the end. So briefly, what we're going to look at today, I'm going to show our two different apps, mobile apps for accessing data, and then we're going to do a short demo of each of them. And then, like I said, we'll take some questions. So here are the two apps. We do one called Mobile Monitor, which gives you your customized view on your data. And we have Search, which gives you ad hoc access to the data configured in the data model. Both of these apps are available on Apple and Android platforms. They can be deployed inside a mobile device management system like Intelligent Hub or Intune or something, and they can be deployed outside of it as well. Deploying them inside a platform like Intelligent Hub gives you secure VPN access to your systems, so that's probably the better way to do it for an enterprise company. This is the Mobile Monitor application. It gives you your own customized dashboards. It gives you access to user configured alerts, reports that you subscribe to, events from something like a shutdown system as well, and settings, but that's how you set the app up. It also has a mobile manager piece. This lets you set up the content that you want to see. So we can see what I'm going to show you in the demo then is we'll go through the dashboards, but it's also got tabs for a library. So you can publish your content to a library, and you can also import from a library content that other people have created. And you can either publish individual dashboards or groups of dashboards and subscribe to them as well. That's a really powerful feature because it means that you can set up dashboards on behalf of other people. So for example, you might configure them for a management group. They may subscribe to a set of overview dashboards, and then someone can manage the content on them on their behalf. So it means people can use the app without having to know too much about how to use and set up the mobile manager. You can also have data from multiple sources. So any data source, any time series data source connected to Ingenuity can be used to make dashboards. You can also access all the calculations, all that functionality that's in the platform itself. Okay, so we're going to switch to a short demo of what this looks like. To do this, I need to share my other screen now. So I'm just going to share my other desktop. Okay, so in order to show this, what I've got is I've got the mobile apps running in a web browser. So this is exactly what it would look like in your phone, but in order to demo it here, I'm able to run it in a web browser. So here we've got the groups of dashboards that we've subscribed to, and then you can just swipe through them, like swiping left and right on your phone. And then if you tap on one of them, on the little arrow to the left, you get certain options. So here we can see that we can have a trend of the data, we can go to a related dashboard, or we can see some stats. If I look at the stats, it just shows me, for example, the min and the max and the mean during that time and the last time that this point was updated. If we want to make a trend of that data, we can go in, and now I can change the time range. For example, say something happened and I go, oh, actually, I'd like to look a bit more on that. I'd like to look at a month. Then I can do that. Or you can use your pinching just to adjust things. You can change the time range and investigate it that way. Then if I click on the link, I can go to a dashboard that's related to it. So I've made this, we'll see this in the mobile manager, but I've set up a related dashboard that shows me then the details of, in this case, the first stage separator. So you see what we were seeing was a summary of the oil outlet from the first stage separator. Let's say there was some anomaly and I thought, oh, I'd like to see a bit more. Well, now I can go to my related dashboard here and I can see the level, the pressure, the temperature, still see the flow, as well. So let's take a look then. Oh, actually, let's look at the other tabs before we jump into the manager. The other tabs here are the alerts. So you've got access to user configured alerts that you've set up. There's a filter at the top, and this lets you show either just the active alerts, or you can take that filter off and just show all of them. So this shows you all the alerts that there have been on these tags. Again, if you click on these, it will show you exactly when it happened and some details of it. You can also see reports that you've subscribed to. So any reports that you might normally receive on email, you could receive them on this app instead. And events, we can configure events. We can connect to something like a SIS, a safety integrity system, or a shutdown system that gives events from another system that may be of interest to you to see. So in this case, what we've done for other customers is connect to the shutdown system so they can see the levels of up to level 3 shutdowns. So if you saw something on a dashboard, oh, production stopped, you go to the events page, what happened? Oh, there was a trip on the compressor. And it means people don't have to call people up. They can get enough info by themselves. So, okay, let's look at the mobile manager and how we would configure these dashboards. So this is what you see when you're inside your organization, configuring your view on the world. So here we've got the 2 groups of dashboards that we saw at the start. We've got the wells and production, and we've got the separator here. You can see there's a difference here in that 2 of these dashboards just have the library icon at the left, and one of them has an edit. The reason is these first 2 are ones that I've subscribed to that were made by other people. In this case, someone called Tester has made a couple of dashboards. But this one is my own dashboard, and I've made this one so I can go in and edit it. And it's super easy to edit. It's the same interface as you'd have on the main Ingenuity platform, but you can create your tag or your calc, give it a title and things. I've also got another group here, the separator group. These are all made by me, and this is why I've made the details. And if I go into my first stage separator, click on it, you can see here the related dashboard I've configured to be this first stage separator. Okay, let's take a little look at the library. So this is where we've published some dashboards that other people might want to use, or we've gone in and pulled some in. Here we can see an example of the dashboard in the group, and then here's my separator group that I've made. And so it means people can go in and browse content that other people have made, and if they want to, then subscribe to it. And then we've just got a duplicate of the event of the tabs you've seen, and I can also go in and I can edit my subscriptions to reports and decide if I don't want to receive a report anymore, I can just remove it from my list. And then there's the events. These are just pushed. It's just a replication of what's on the phone. So let's just show editing something here. Let's take my separator group, and on the second stage separator here, I don't have any oil flow, and I'd actually like to see that. So all I need to do is I just click add new KPI, and I get that a blank one up immediately. I can go into my basket because I've already configured this beforehand to make it quick, but I can just drag my tag into my it says, come on, and just drag. I should be able to just drag this in. Oh, amazing. Let's just copy it instead then. I'll just make my new calc somehow. Okay, let's give it a number. Say add 9 for now. And then I'm going to give it a title, say flow, and we'll save it. So there's my new flow added to my dashboard. Just have to pretend that that was the real tag for now. And then if I go back to my dashboards and I go to my separators, and then I go to my second stage separator, let's refresh the page. There I've got my new KPI that I added straight away, pushed to my dashboard. Okay, a few minutes left. Let's look at the second app, which is search. This is a simpler app than the dashboards one, and it just gives you direct access to your data model. So here we can just search for an object. I'll search for the test separator, which was one I used in the last webinar, just an example of a simple data model. This pulls up the assets that match that, in this case, all the separators, and this is my test separator. If I click on this, this just brings back all the information that we know about from the data model. So here we can see the list of sensors, and again, I can click on those and trend them, and I get the same controls that I had before, sort of edit the view. And we also have a list of any maintenance records, if there was some, and also documents. So here, like if we click on a piping and instrumentation diagram, it will pull that document from your document management system, wherever we've linked it. This is just an example, and we've just got some example P&IDs, but it just shows you how you can quickly access something from your phone directly. I'm not going to demo the RealWare integration on this webinar. We'll demo that on another one, but we do also, it does also support RealML, WearML, which is the wearable markup language for use in RealWare devices. So we have text recognition and camera functionality, so that you can use the eyepiece in your headset to do the search for you. It can recognize the text and then perform the search. So that this data model is the same data model that would be behind the scenes in Ingenuity. Okay, let's go back to the presentation. This is just a slide then showing the data model that we showed last time, which is the test separator and the related info that you would see if it was in the web-based application. So, okay, we've done really well on time. Has anyone got any questions or any info, anything they'd like me to cover in the demo or talk about? Sometimes the question is, how quickly can this be deployed? I know that's a popular one. Well, the apps themselves can be deployed very, very quickly because they just come straight from the App Store. If you were to deploy them through a mobile device management system like AirWatch, which is now Intelligent Hub, then they get pushed to your phone automatically. All the configuration's done in the background. If you deploy it without MDM, you just download it from the App Store. The bigger question then is, how do you set up, for example, the data model for the search app? That can take a little bit longer depending on the size of the model. A basic one can go in very quickly though, and it can be built from existing systems, like you might have an equipment hierarchy and a document management system where you can export a list of the links between the documents and the different tags. A Pi database, you might have an an AF model that gives you links between equipment and the tags, or you might be able to do that from regular expressions. So a lot of it can be built from scripts. The quickest app, I guess, is probably the mobile manager. That can be set up very quickly if you already have the interface to your real-time historian, like a Pi or an IP21. Then it's just a case of setting up some dashboards. And the way we've found that used a lot is you end up with a few key users, and they make content that other people start subscribing to. Also, removing the need for emailed reports has been a big use case. It gets rid of the inbox clutter, and then it's just easy to find stuff in there.
Mary, could you discuss that in more detail, like what was the problem with the inbox clutter and how a solution like this one can help the users?
Right, so often you find there's a lot of ad hoc reports get emailed around. So by ad hoc, I mean it's not under document management. It doesn't have a number and it doesn't have versions. It's just something that you need to issue every day, like a morning meeting or a production report. these are typically emailed as either spreadsheets or PDFs, and it means that multiple copies of the same report get stored. So you fill up people's inboxes. And also, if you get a new version of that report, it's just, when you search back in your email, how do you know which was the latest? It's easy to open the wrong one. By doing it this way, it's published once into a web report system, and then it's pushed to people's devices. So only the latest one is ever shown, and it's also in chronological order, and you can configure how many reports you view on your device. So if you keep the last 3 or 5 or week, it means it's just easier to find stuff, and you don't have to open it. It only downloads it when you want to go and see it. So the storage on your phone stays pretty low. That's another point actually I should have mentioned, is the bandwidth that we use. These apps have been designed from the ground up to be super low on bandwidth and also battery power. So your battery lasts all day. You won't notice any difference running these apps. It's not heavy, and it doesn't sit there burning your battery when they're open. So yeah, going back to the reports, it's now just, it's like a super lightweight way of managing these ad hoc reports. And because they're on a web system, they're searchable. You can access them. You can come back and look at them later. So, okay, question here on, does the application produce any notifications? Good question. So the mobile apps themselves don't produce alerts, but they have notifications built into them. So if a new report's issued, for example, you can enable notifications such that it will show on your home screen that the daily report's been issued. Or if an alert comes in, the phone will show you a notification. Oh, there's a new alert on the Eigen app, and you tap on it and it takes you in and shows you what that is. How you configure those alerts on time series data is in the Ingenuity platform. So you would right click on something and just you can set limits, and then you can set how you want to be notified. So in fact, I may actually be able to show that here. If I just trend this value again, here I can go edit limits. Here I can go in, I can put my threshold, and if it's a maximum or a minimum, and I can ask to be notified. And here we can have an email, or we can put our mobile username in. And that's, from there, then we would get an alert when that was triggered. And in fact, I think we had some of them you could see were green on the alerts page here. Yeah, okay, there we go. So they're orange when they go into alert, and then they go white when they come out of alert. The events that happen on other systems, obviously we just import whatever's triggered. So the configuration of those events is done elsewhere. But good question, thank you.
So a question from Andrew. Have you found there are restrictions on which live production data clients will share? Okay. Interesting question. So I guess that's a philosophy question for an organization to decide. There's different levels at which you can control access to information. If we're talking about a PI interface, then you can restrict stuff at the interface level. And so it could be that it's just not available to this system. This app is designed as an internal app, though. So it's meant for use by companies for their own people. It's not for publishing information on the internet for other people. So you should come up with a philosophy that's consistent with that. Now, drilling, we have a mobile app for drilling. We're not covering it in this webinar, but I'll mention it briefly, because that does raise an interesting scenario where sometimes you have, for example, a tight well where the information is very restricted, and you have to be careful with who you share it with. They have to be handled in a completely different way, and actually you just shouldn't put that information through these platforms at all. So yeah, I don't know if I can answer that one completely. It's not, we don't have controls in the application to allow granular access. We're very much just passing on what's what's accessible to us, I guess, in the back end.
There is another question here. There has been progress on many artificial intelligence projects and applications. Can now an alert be triggered by a behavior of a signal and not by just a signal going above or below a specific number?
Great question. Okay, so the behavior, for example, rate of change rather than just the level. Just saying, okay, we're not too concerned about the number, but if the number starts changing at more than this rate, maybe that's the type of thing.
I think it refers more to results from machine learning analysis.
Okay, right, interesting question. So our application doesn't have, the event detection is fairly basic in our application, but you can, as the basis of a limit, you can use another tag. So it doesn't just have to be a fixed value. You can give it another signal as the limit. And so if that other tag was an algorithm that gave you the limit or calculated a more dynamic limit, then that might be a way of doing it. I think the solution to that problem would be a combination of probably the system that's generating the predicted behaviors, or the behavioral template that we need to assess against, but then our system at the event detection level could do the check of, is it above or below this reference value? But that's an interesting case, and I'd like to chat more about that, because there's so many different things I can think of already, use cases for it, and I don't think there's a one size fits all answer to that. So this is probably worth taking offline. So actually, let me contact you about that separately, I think, and try and come up with a more comprehensive answer to it. But great question, very interesting. Thanks. So yeah, any other questions on this? It's been some good ones so far.
I have a question. Mary, could you comment on implementing security around this application?
Yeah, sure. So I think I mentioned one earlier around using a VPN to access the endpoints. So one of the things we designed it for with the mobile monitor app is to have a push only setup as much as possible. So we didn't want to have an endpoint available to the internet that allowed incoming queries. So that's the purpose of the mobile manager, for example, is that you set up your information and then it's pushed to your device. Obviously, with the ability to trend, there's some incoming now because you make the query back. However, what we've not exposed is the list tags interface. So there's no way that someone could go, oh, just tell me all the data that I could query and then I'll decide. It's just a very specific query for a particular tag. If you deploy it within a mobile device management application, you get then a VPN tunnel usually as part of that, and that's then super secure. So the endpoint is not even on the internet. I think that's why I think that's the best way to do that part of it. The search app, same thing. Although we have the query interface now because we're doing a search, the search only goes to our data model, and I would strongly recommend that that's deployed in a mobile device management system environment as well, rather than externally, rather than just with an internet facing endpoint. Okay, yeah, any other question, any other thoughts, Joel, around the security? Is there any angles I've missed here?
Perhaps a mention to those security frameworks, the Apple Watch, who is it?
Well, so certainly the app is approved by Apple and Google, so we're compliant with all the Apple policies. It's available on the App Store, so it has to be. Also, obviously, it has user access, so you have to be, and an account has to be enabled by your IT group so that you can access it. And you probably saw on the mobile manager that you can then, there's device control.
So you can connect more than one device to an account. If I just close these, you can see the devices that are connected and using your account. And obviously, if you have the mobile device management, you can then see all the devices that are connected within the system.
Okay.
Thanks. A question here. If the results were written back to the historian, then it would just be a tag in the system to use. I think that's just a comment, yeah, about
results from machine learning.
I think that's for, sorry, I think that's related to the using AI or signal behaviors. Yes, so part of Ingenuity is that you can write back to a historian. And so one option might be to have the results written back to a separate tag that's used for something. Yeah, so sometimes the question is, how much does it cost? This comes as part of an Ingenuity license already. So you need Ingenuity on the back end to enable these. And then once you have Ingenuity, then you have access to these mobile apps. Or rather, you can download them and install them, and then they'll then work against it. So, okay, any other questions? Thanks for the questions so far, really good. I wonder if there's going to be a feedback form at the end of this webinar. So we really value folks' feedback on previous ones has been really encouraging, and it's great. Just particularly things like the timing of the webinar and how long it is, the time of day. We're keen to make this as useful as possible to people. So please do take a few minutes to fill that in. I think there's only 5 or 6 questions on it. And in fact, maybe if one of the hosts could just, the panelists could post that in the chat now. And I think, Effie, you were saying it's also going to appear at the end. Is that right?
Yeah, so it will pop up at the end of this Zoom webinar. But I'll pop the link in the chat as well, so hopefully everyone can get access to it.
That's great, thank you. So yes, any other questions? One question might be, what functionality are you planning? Oh, thanks, Andrew. That's a kind comment. So some of the functionality we've got in the pipeline are new KPIs. The Ingenuity platform has lots of different KPIs, ways of visualizing data. We tried to keep the mobile app as lightweight as possible and as simple, because the thinking behind it is the intention isn't to replace the desktop app with your mobile because it's such a small screen, but rather to rethink things specifically for mobile. So we started with just the simplest way to view data possible, and we've gone with a Sparkline. We've got some of the other KPIs like the dial coming, the dial of the gauge, so you can see things in a round way, again with limits, and also different screen layouts so that you could have a couple of KPIs side by side and then a trend underneath, just to give you some different options for the visuals. So that'll be coming soon. But I think we're just about to come up to the half hour, so that's excellent timing. Thanks so much, everyone, for taking the time to join us. It's been lovely to see you. And there's a link to the survey. If you could just take a few minutes to fill that in, be really grateful, and then help us to make these as useful as possible. So thanks very much.